Series Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, presented by Taco Bell. The Braves find themselves in first place in the National League East. Not only that, they've got the biggest lead in any division of any leader in baseball. They're 6 games up on the Nationals, as you just saw for the guys in the studio. The Nationals lost earlier today to Cleveland. Meanwhile, things are much, much tighter for the National League West. 4 teams, including the surging Padres, within 2 games of first place in that division. Hi, everybody. Dan Schulman, John Kruk, Kurt Schilling with us this week. Oral Hershiser is at the College World Series. And Schill, let's start with the Giants. Tim LINCECUM on the mound tonight, 2-time Cy Young Award winner, but now the 2nd year in a row when the numbers aren't very good. Is this what LINCECUM is now?
It is. It absolutely is. And change is the word. We're talking about CC Sabathia, Ubaldo Jimenez, a lot of guys being talked about that were premier guys that are not premier guys anymore, and it's all tied to velocity. LINCECUM's peak velocity down almost 5-6 miles an hour. His average velocity down the same. It's almost like going from a Ferrari to a Volkswagen, but you got to drive the car you're in. He doesn't. He has different weapons. He has same fastball changeup, different differential, but he's still pitching like he's throwing 98, and he's not, and that's a problem.
And he's facing a lineup that can score a lot of runs, especially when they make good contact, hit a lot of home runs. The Braves are a big home run hitting team. For more on the Giants first, though, let's go down to the field. Moments ago, Buster Olney, Brandon Belt.
Brandon, in preparation for this game, what did you learn about Julio Teheran?
You know, just from playing against him last game and then looking at him on video a little bit, you know, he's a tough pitcher. He's got great stuff, obviously, and he's going to be able to get away with some mistakes just because he has great stuff. But if we go up there and stick with our plan, we should be okay.
Now, you guys enter this game with 4 games within 2 games of each other in the National League West. How are you feeling about where the Giants stand today?
You know, I think if you ask anybody on our team, we feel pretty confident in our team. I think we have the best all-around team as far as pitching, defense, and hitting. So like I said, if we just kind of stick with our approach and stick with what we do best, we're going to be fine out there.
Brandon, thanks. Dan, back to you.
All right, Buster, thank you. The Giants, of course, used to overcoming doubts and expectations from outside the clubhouse. They've won 2 of the last 3 World Series. For the Braves, they got a walk-off win yesterday from probably their best RBI guy right now, maybe definitely their best RBI guy, Freddie Freeman.
Without doubt, with only 6 home runs and 45 RBIs, Dan, he's become that clutch guy. 446 with runners in scoring position, 407 with 2 outs and runners in scoring position. He is the guy that the Giants have to figure out, how do we get him out, and if we can't, can we put him on and try to get the next guy out, which is going to be B.J. Upton. His RBI chance has been enhanced because Jason Hayward has come back off the appendectomy, hitting 273 since his return. He's on base, and Freeman is driving him in, and that's been the Braves' offense.
On the mound for the Braves tonight, 22-year-old right-hander Julio Teheran, who after a bit of a slow start this year in his first 3 starts, has really come on. Shill, what can you tell us about this guy?
This is about command and control, both mechanically and stuff-wise. You want to watch. This is he's a hard thrower, and as you heard the Giants hitters talk about, he's got great stuff. He's got to be in command and control of his body. You got to watch his delivery, watch his follow-through. Early in the game, pay close attention to where the glove is set up and where his fastball ends up being in the strike zone.
Let's take a look now at the Giants starting lineup. Brought to you by Taco Bell. They are without 3 injured players in Pagan, Scudero, and Sandoval. Buster Posey moves up to the 3 spot in this configuration. He has absolutely wrecked the Braves the last couple of years. And moving up to the cleanup spot, a guy who has had a very good season, hitting for power, stealing bases, Hunter Pence. Giants, though, really missing. How often do you see a team without their 1, 2, and 3 hitters, all of them injured at the same time? Although Scudero could be just a couple of days away, and Pagan just a couple of days behind him.
And they moved Brandon Crawford to the 2-hole, and he's hitting 293 this season. So that's a good guy to move from 8 to 2 who's hitting that well.
Paul Emmel, the home plate umpire in Atlanta here tonight. And we are underway with a called strike. So right now, the center fielder and leadoff hitter for the Giants is Gregor Blanco. Did a home run on Friday, and he has filled in nicely, as many of the subs have done for the Giants in the wake of these injuries.
Well, that's what teams do. Teams that win get in the postseason, teams that battle through 162 games. Guys get hurt all the time, and you got to get guys in there who can pick them up.
Saw Bruce Bochy, longtime manager of the Giants, 2 World Series championships, a former teammate of yours, Crucky, in San Diego. And Not exactly stressed out. You can't tell when you walk into Bochy's office if they've won 12 in a row or lost 12 in a row.
No, and he's been like that since I've known him, since 1986. Yeah, he's not going to get too high. And you know what, though, Dan? The players see that, and they know that, you know, we don't have to get excited if we lose a few in a row, because he's not going to get overly excited about it.
Inside, 2-2. After Blanco, it'll be Brandon Crawford, then Buster Posey. Very nice night here in Atlanta. No threat of any rain, not much of a breeze. 82 degrees, could be a lot hotter than that down here this time of year. Swing and a miss on the curveball, 1 down. Let's take a look now at Do More, brought to you by Safeco. We mentioned Pagan, Scudero, Sandoval, all injured. Pagan and Sandoval are on the DL. Scudero hit by a pitch, suffering what they're calling a mallet finger. It's the pinky finger on his left hand. He's got a splint on it to keep it from becoming permanently bent and twisted. And it sounds like he's going to avoid surgery, avoid the DL, and maybe back in a couple of days.
Yeah, and I talked to him before the game, and he showed me the splint that he's wearing, and he said it hurts him a lot more fielding the ball than it does hitting, because when he hits, he keeps that left pinky finger off the knob of the bat. It's underneath, so it's not a concern hitting. He just said when he catches a ball, that's when a lot of the pain occurs. It's nasty looking, too. He took that thing off the brace there off, showed it to me. It's nasty.
Crawford takes high, ball 2. You know, Kurt, there are so many good young shortstops into baseball. We'll talk about Andrelton Simmons of the Braves. Somehow, even though he plays for a World Series champion, Brandon Crawford seems to get lost in the shuffle.
Well, they get lost in the shuffle. Every year it seems like we talk about everybody but the Giants, and then in September we're talking about the Giants as one of the teams that's clinched early. And it's a respect thing. And they know it as players.
Ramiro Pena on to first. Crawford retired, 2 down. And now Buster Posey, the reigning MVP and batting champion in the National League. Numbers actually are a little bit better this year than where they were on this date last year. He had a monster second half last year. He's a native of Leesburg, Georgia. And as you can see, he has done very well against the Atlanta Braves.
He's done pretty well against everyone.
Just outside, ball 1.
Curious to watch his approach. This is why good hitters like Buster will beat you. When you have to use all of your pitches from the first at bat, you have nothing to get them out with later because they've seen everything.
And you have to have a feeling, and that's why Hunter Pence has put up the numbers he's put up, because he hits behind Buster and he gets to see all these pitches. You know, he knows exactly when he steps in the box what Tehran's going to throw.
And he hits with his hair on fire.
Simmons, inning over. 3 up and 3 down to go the Giants. Tim Lincecum to the mound here in Atlanta when we come back. To the bottom of the first here in Atlanta, Sunday Night Baseball, presented by Taco Bell on ESPN. A look at the Atlanta Braves lineup presented by Taco Bell. You're looking at Andrelton, Simmons, the leadoff hitter. The Braves have hit more home runs than any team in the National League. They've got 91 so far on the season. And Jason Heyward, who was hitting 121 when he went on the DL after needing an emergency appendectomy, hitting 273 since getting healthy. And Freddie Freeman, an outstanding job driving in runs, hitting in the clutch this year, including the game winner last night. 446 with runners in scoring position on the season. On the mound tonight for the Giants, two-time Cy Young Award winner in 08 and 09, Tim Lincecum. Show what's the key for him against this.
I'll tell you what, there's a lot of conversation around his velocity over the last couple of days, the last couple starts. I know as a pitcher, when I was struggling and I had velocity issues, I was very cognizant and aware of it. Watch his velocity early, and I guarantee if there's a gun in the park, he's looking at it after each pitch because he's as concerned as everybody else is about it.
Used to throw 94, 95 with consistency back when he was winning his first Cy Young Award. Now he's more like 89 or 90. 91 there as he pumps in a strike.
Well, talking to Bruce Bochy before the game, his last start in Pittsburgh where he got roughed up, they said he didn't throw one pitch on the outer half of the plate to a right-handed hitter. He couldn't command the outside part of the plate. Consequently, you look in and he got hit hard.
And I would probably tell you, as a right-handed pitcher, 80% of your fastballs to right-handed hitters go to the outside part of the plate. As a right-handed power guy.
Sitting here in Atlanta, that was always their philosophy. John Smoltz, down and away, outside corner knees if you can. Even the guys who didn't throw hard, it was down and away to the right.
You have to be able to throw a fastball down and away in a fastball count to a fastball hitter.
It's a Leo Mazzoni theory.
Absolutely.
My old buddy from back home.
Simmons doesn't walk often, only 13 walks, hitting 248 on base percentage of only 281. Not your ideal leadoff hitter. But the Braves don't really have an ideal candidate to be their leadoff hitter. Jason Heyward waiting on deck. But he will draw a walk here. You can visit Gamecast at ESPN.com/MLB/scores. Find tonight's game, then click on the Gamecast link. You'll find up to the at-bat stats on tonight's game, multiple Twitter feeds, and see behind-the-scenes video. Plus, you can join a live chat about the game. Well, kind of an ominous beginning for Tim Lincecum. That's the 35th walk he's given up this year in 76 2/3 innings. And you don't want to give any free passes to a team with this much power. Started him with a changeup, and it's 0-1.
More importantly than the walk for me was how badly he missed with the pitch. Trying to go down in the outer half, he misfired the ball, and because he's overthrowing the ball. He's velocity conscious, very velocity conscious.
And Heyward's helping him out.
But that is the equalizer. Now, the thing about it is, imagine that with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball.
Two Cy Youngs and unhittable is what that is. But,
absolutely.
You know, this is a situation where Jason Heyward hasn't recognized a pitch. You know, the two changeups in the dirt, and he's hacked at both of them. He should be hitting 2-0 right now.
And there's a case where it looked like Posey wanted the fastball in, Kurt, and it missed 2 feet over the plate.
He hit the 94 right there, which was his fastest pitch tonight. But he's got to reach back and overthrow to make that pitch, and you lose command and you lose location when you have to do that.
Would you take 91 with good command or 94 with poor command?
I'll take anything with good command over 94 anything.
If you're Jason Heyward right here, he showed you the fastball up just to let you see it. You got to know that a changeup is coming here.
I had a pitching coach early in my career talking about velocity making the pitcher. You have to learn how to pitch, but velocity is the equalizer. You look at the offensive numbers. As the velocity goes down, in every case, the offense is going to go up.
The catch made in right center by Blanco. Simmons has to hustle back and is back safely at first.
And that's the thing. We were talking about in the opening. You have to understand. I think one of the biggest keys to pitching and being successful in the big leagues, playing in the big leagues, is understanding your tool set, knowing what it is you have and how to use it. And he came up. He was a power arm, straight over the top. His changeup is still incredibly deceptive. But when you don't have to be afraid of the 96, and Crucky can speak to this, when it's 96 and 86, that's a dramatically different guy to hit off than when it's 91 to 86.
And that's what's amazing to me is how can a guy lose velocity off his fastball, yet his changeup is the same velocity it's always been.
Swing and a miss by Justin Upton. Upton got off to an incredible start this year. Hit 12 home runs in the month of April and has hit only 3 since. And the Braves go as their power bats go. They are 3-19 this year when they don't hit a home run. Runner goes. Pitch bounces in and away from Posey. Simmons thought about it but puts the brakes on as he rounds second. The combination of Lincecum on the mound and Posey behind the plate has not been a good one for the Giants in terms of handling the running game.
He does not hold runners well. And when you're good, when you don't give up a lot of base runners, you generally don't hold. You don't have to hold runners well. That's another miss. That's a non-competitive pitch. That didn't do anything but advance the runner.
Opponents are now 36 for their last 38 when Lincecum is on the mound.
One of the things that I always find fascinating, we're 14 pitches in. How many pitches can you remember that he's thrown in the strike zone? 3 or 4 maybe? And he's got outs because he's got chase stuff. But he's a guy who doesn't have the stuff to be as wild as he is anymore, and that's why you're seeing the numbers you're seeing.
So even when he was winning Cy Youngs, the command wasn't
never.
Great,
He's always been a guy who walks a lot of guys, but he didn't get hit before.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm Justin Upton, I'm looking middle in right here and trying to yank one.
2-2.
And he throws that one. Wonder why guys don't hit 400 every year.
Well hit. Deep left center. Caught by Blanco. Back to second, Simmons. What a play by Blanco.
Oh, you remember the perfect game by Matt Cain. Someone made a great play in right center field, play right field. Blanco right here, though, goes a long way for this ball. Great awareness of where the fence is. He slowed up. If he keeps running hard, he catches the ball, hits the wall at the same time. He did slow up a little bit. Great play right there by Blanco and great base running by Simmons.
So 2 down for Freddie Freeman. He drove in the game-winning run of Sergio Romo with a base hit in the bottom of the 9th last night. Look at the production. Hitting .446 with runners in scoring position will do that for you. And he's driven in 45 despite missing a couple of weeks with an oblique injury. That's as good a pitch as Lincecum's made.
And just as many hits to right field as it is to left field. So he's using the entire field, especially with these runners in scoring position.
Base hit in the left field. Simmons in to score. 1-0 Atlanta.
One of the problems when you're questioning your velocity and you're overthrowing your fastball, you overthrow your soft stuff as well, and that's what happens to a changeup that you try to throw too hard. It stays up in the zone, and that's probably as bad a pitch for a changeup guy as you could throw to a lefty as a changeup up in the strike zone.
especially an 0-2 pitch.
Listen, I never had a problem with 0-2 hits if you were making good pitches. That was not a good pitch. He had stuff, he had room, he could make him swing below the zone, he could make him chase away. That's the one spot you don't, as Tim Lincecum, you can't pitch there anymore.
Well, that's an approach right there. He had no qualms at all about hitting the ball the other way. He didn't even think about pull against Lincecum because he can't command the inside part of the plate to lefties.
B.J. Upton, the batter. Freddie Gonzalez talked to us about Freddie Freeman before the game, talking about how last year he'd come up with runners in scoring position. He'd always try to hit a home run. Sometimes he'd try to do too much. Now he's content just to drive in one at a time, cut down his swing, use the whole field, and that's why he's driven in as many runs as he has. He's got a chance to be a big-time run producer for the Braves.
And Freddie also told us that he was really upset last year that he only drove in 94 runs when he thought he had plenty of opportunities to drive in 100. And Greg Walker even told him, he said, you know, you had a chance driving 120.
I always hated when the hitter figured that one out, because you could see as a pitcher everything changes.
And not that you want to pitch around a guy in the first inning, but you know, he did have Freeman 0-2. He had pitches to waste to see if he can chase. You know, B.J. Upton's struggling.
A long first inning for Lincecum. 23 pitches, a run in, a man on, 2 outs. Both the outs were hard hit balls. And strike 3 called. B.J. Upton didn't like the call. Lincecum gives up the 2-out RBI single to Freddie Freeman. 1-0 Atlanta at the end of 1.
Brought to you by Kellogg's Frosted Flakes.
For a dad, there's nothing like taking your kid to the ballpark, teaching them the game, answering their questions, like, can I get a hot dog? Ice cream? Cotton candy? Bases loaded in the 6th. Can I go to the bathroom? Your team's rally just thwarted. What does 6-4-3 mean? Your team down 1, a man on first with nobody out. The batter swings away. Your son tugs at your shirt. You look down at him. Why aren't they bunting? You smile. Great question.
One of the first things you think about when you think about baseball are fathers and sons, and this is Justin and B.J. Upton with their dad Manny and with B.J.'s son Riley. Part of the pregame ceremony here. A nice moment for the Upton family in Atlanta. That's a proud grandpa right there, huh?
That's tear-jerking. Just to think about, you know, the lineage.
Mm-hmm. Justin and B.J. teammates here in Atlanta this year. 1-0 the Braves lead as we go to the second. Hunter Pence to face Julio Teheran. Pence, one of the most unorthodox players in baseball, but also one of the better ones. Hitting close to 300, hitting for power, stealing bases, and hot. He's a guy who's just as happy, it seems, Kurt, to hit a pitch a foot outside as one right down the middle.
He's swinging. As a pitcher, you got to go. You got to know every pitch is going to be a swing, or at least approach it that way.
A called strike, says Paul Emmel, and it's 1-2.
Well, it was a called strike because Hunter Pence was committed to a fastball in, and he was bailing and wailing, and that thing slowed up on him and curved away. He had no chance.
I'll tell you what, this is a nice look from him. I watched Julio Teheran pitch a few starts ago. I thought he was more of a thrower. Tonight he's very under control. He's staying what I call the doorway. He's staying inside the doorway. He's all his energy is going to home plate. He's commanding the ball very, very well.
In the air to shallow center for out number 1.
Yeah, he's mixed both his pitches up early. I think he's throwing the ball to both sides of the plate with his fastball tonight, and he's feeling his breaking ball because he broke it out early and it was good early. But if you watch how this kid comes through the ball, I have what I call the doorway, and I basically will draw a doorway around the front of the mound. Everything needs to come through that. Everything needs to come through the finish. And if you look at when he finishes, he's straight to home plate. Very Maddox-like in a sense. He's in a position to field the ball. All his energy's going to home plate, and you can command the baseball to both sides doing that.
He's a guy 2 years ago was considered one of the Braves' best prospects. Then he took a big step backwards last year, struggled at AAA, but has gotten another opportunity and has made the most of it after a slow start to the year. Gave up 13 runs in 16 innings in his first 3 starts. In his last 9 starts, he has been terrific. And overall, he's 4-3 with a 3.62 ERA on the season and a great strikeout to walk ratio of 59-15.
Yeah.
And hooked into right field, a base hit for Brandon Belt.
Yeah, so what I was talking earlier about this door thing, and basically what I do is I draw a door around, and everything that the pitcher does needs to happen inside that door. And your hands and arms can go out of there during the delivery. But if you watch when the ball comes out of his hand after he finishes, everything in the delivery is headed to home plate. There's no energy being spent this way or this way. And that means he's commanding the ball to both sides of the plate, and he's got a feel for it.
First pitch swinging, Andres Torres with a pop-up into shallow center. The catch made by Simmons, 2 down. And so if a pitcher is not staying in the doorway, then something is going to suffer?
His last start, he was falling hard left every single time. And for a young pitcher, one of the hardest things to get them to understand is early game tempo. A lot of times they'll come out of the bullpen, they'll be frustrated, their stuff is bad. So at some point, the light switch will click on. They realize it doesn't matter what my bullpen stuff was. The game is the game. And they start to take a breath and relax. And he's doing that tonight.
2 down. Belt at first. And Joaquin Arias, the third baseman, is the batter, playing for the injured Pablo Sandoval, who was on the DL with a foot injury. Ball and a strike. Giants getting some pretty good production out of the likes of Arias and Blanco and Torres, guys who are getting an opportunity to play more because of the injuries.
Well, that's the thing with bench players is the reason why some of these guys are bench players is, you know, for a week or two while a guy's on a 15-day DL, they can play really good baseball, but projected over the long haul of a season, that's why they are bench players, because they'll eventually go into slumps and go into big lulls.
Bruce Bochy hoping to get Scudero and Pagan back within a few days, and Sandoval maybe not too much longer after that. And as we showed you off the top of the show, the National League West looks like it's anybody's race right now. There are 4 teams within 2 games. San Diego beat Arizona again today, so the Padres have climbed over 500 and within 2 games of the lead. Close, but back safely is Belt. Tehran leads the National League with 5 pickoffs this season.
I always got frustrated when an umpire acted like it was no big deal. He's just looking. I thought that was pretty close.
Pretty poor slide back into first by Belt. Like he hit his knees first and popped up.
The hidden art there for me is always the tag. Good first baseman do that quick pop tag.
Got him. Second strikeout of the night for Tehran. We'll go to the bottom of the second. Perennial All-Star Brian McCann will lead it off for the Braves. Sunday Night Baseball is presented by Taco Bell. Sometimes you gotta live Mas. And in part by Hyundai. New thinking, new possibilities. Dan Schulman, John Kruk, Kurt Schilling, Buster Olney. Sunday Night Baseball from Atlanta. The Braves lead the Giants 1-0. Brian McCann facing Tim Lincecum to begin the bottom of the second. McCann, Chris Johnson, and Ramiro Pena, 6, 7, and 8 coming up. The Giants with the shift on for the left-hand hitting McCann.
And Bruce Bochy said they're not big. They shift, but they're not big on the huge shift. But I don't know what you would call this one, but it's pretty substantial.
Well, part of the problem with the shift is you have to hit your spots as a pitcher. When you put your defense to a shift, you're saying, I'm going to throw the ball here, and when I do, the hitter's going to hit the ball there. And everybody has to, it comes off of the pitcher hitting his spot first.
And they're shifting him to pull, and all 3 pitches have been outside.
And another walk. Second inning in a row where Lincecum has walked the leadoff man. Well, once upon a time, and it wasn't that long ago, 2008 and 2009, Tim Lincecum was as good a pitcher as there was in baseball. Won the Cy Young each of those 2 years. Nobody struck out more batters between 2008 and 2011 than Tim Lincecum. A 4-time All-Star. There you can see the strikeout numbers. Almost 1,000 strikeouts in those 4 years. But last season and this season, with the exception of the work he did in relief in the playoffs last year, have been a much different story. Combined between last year and this year in the regular season, Lincecum's ERA is over 5. That is the highest of any National League pitcher. Chris Johnson, the batter, hitting .324. Hits the ball down the left field line, dropping and in for a base hit. Runners at first and second, nobody out.
One of the things to pay attention to is watch Buster's glove when he calls a fastball, and watch where he reaches for the ball as it crosses the plate. This, to me, this is one of the biggest problems for Timmy right now. And let's be clear, I believe, stuff-wise, he could be a 15 to 20 game winner still if he makes the adjustment. He is just having so much trouble making the transition. So
what is the adjustment? What does he need to do?
He's got to get more under control with his delivery. He's got a very challenging delivery physically, and his motion. I know people talk about how cool and eccentric his delivery is. I've never looked at his delivery as something that was a positive for a guy his size.
Just turned 29 yesterday, so theoretically should be right in the middle of his prime. But the last 2 years have been anything but. He's a free agent at the end of the year, making a ton of money this year. You assume he won't be back with the Giants next year, or if he will, it'll be at a drastically reduced price. But you also wonder, no matter where he might be next year, if he's even going to be a starting pitcher. You know, that success he had in the playoffs last year as a reliever might lead to some teams saying, hey, yeah, we like you, but we're thinking of you out of the pen a little bit.
I don't know, and in my opinion, I don't believe that delivery translates to being a guy that you could throw 4 or 5 days a week. And I think he's still an exceptional guy, a pitcher who could win, again, 15 to 20 games if he makes an adjustment.
How much can you adjust your mechanics at this point of your life?
I mean, that's the question, right? I believe mechanically he is what he is. He's never going to be a guy that's going to paint the corners. It's just not going to happen. So, but if he could ease himself back and throw the ball at 85 to 90% effort instead of his 105 every pitch, to me that way his command would get to a point where he could make more swings and misses more often.
Weekly hit to short. Only play to first as the runners advance.
Now, if you saw, I was talking earlier about the door and watching Tehran as he works. If you watch Timmy, this is kind of the same thing. If you watch this doorway thing, and everything should happen inside this, again, his hand might come out or his foot might come out to a point. Watch his heel. His heel hits down. He drags the ball behind him. For the most part, everything's happening there. And he's coming down through. He's getting energy through, and watch the finish. And that's how you can tell when you see the energy going that way at the end. That's how you can tell. You kind of reverse engineer it. And he's got energy going left to right, right to left, and that's not conducive to commanding the ball or throwing the ball to your best of your ability.
Second and third, one out. And up there hacking is Julio Tehran, who's got 5 hits this year, 5 for 25. So you can't take him too lightly. The infield is in for the Giants, trying to cut down a run at the plate if they can. And with Brian McCann, the runner at third, one of the slower runners that you have in the game, the Giants.
Yeah, the guys up the middle, and Crawford and Noonan can play a little bit deeper and give themselves a little more range.
I wasn't a very good hitting pitcher by any stretch, but this, for me, as a pitcher, was the hardest guy to hit. The guy with a good changeup was impossible to hit as a pitcher.
You just look dead red.
I had to. I only had one swing and one speed.
He had the great ability to hit the ball the other way.
Curveball for a strike, or maybe a slider actually at 83, and it's 1-2 on Tehran. got him to chase, 2 down. Two down in the inning now. Bottom of the second. The Braves up 1-0 here at Turner Field. And back to the top of the order for ANDRELTON Simmons, who walked, stole the base, and scored back in the first. And you can see that this has not been a good spot for him. 2 outs, runners in scoring position. 1 for 24. His teammate B.J. Upton is 0 for 25 in these spots. We talked about Crucky last week when we saw the Cardinals. They got an entire lineup, it seems, of guys hitting 350, 400 with runners in scoring position.
When you look at the best for the Braves, Freddie Freeman hitting with runners in scoring position, he goes the other way. How many guys on the Cardinals? Every one of them, except maybe Beltran, go the other way. Pitchers aren't going to throw you something middle end that you can hit out of the ballpark for a 3-run homer. And if you have the ability to hit a single to right field right here for Simmons, and you score 1 and possibly score Johnson from second, so be it.
Golf to center. Playable for Blanco, and the inning is over as the Braves leave 2 men on. 1-0 Atlanta at the end of 2, and a Baseball Tonight update after this break. This year. They've been shut out 8 times right now. Look at these offensive numbers, guys. They are among the worst offensive teams in all of baseball. And when you looked at the roster or the lineup they thought they were taking into the season, you wouldn't have guessed numbers like this.
Well, they had a lot of injuries, Dan. Ryan Zimmerman missed some time with the shoulder. Jason Worth missed a bunch of time with the hamstring. Now Bryce Harper's out of the lineup with the knee. Yeah, when you're losing those 3 guys in the middle of your lineup, your 2-3-4 hitter, 3-4-5 hitter, whatever Davey Johnson hits him at, you're going to lose a lot of production.
Let's go down to Buster for more.
Guys, I spoke with a highly ranked executive of another team whose team does internal metrics, and he said he's got the Nationals as by far the worst defensive team in baseball and just ahead of the Mets overall.
They were a team before the year, very good team last year. Obviously a painful end to their season in the postseason, but another year for Strasburg, a full year, another year for Harper. The acquisition of Soriano would certainly look like the Nationals were going to have a great season, and there they are at 500, 6 games back of Atlanta right now in the National League East.
And Harper was off to having a great season before he got hurt.
Nick Noonan, the second baseman, leading off the inning for the Giants, filling in for the injured Marco Scutaro.
To me, just watching from afar and not speaking to anyone in the organization, it looks to me like when they have injuries, they don't have anything to help them. They don't have that you know, let's go get them. You know, let's throw a shutout. Let's, you know, give up one run and win this game. It seems like, well, when we get everyone back, we'll be okay. The Giants aren't crying that game right now.
And a swing and a miss. One down. More Major League action coming your way this week on the ESPN family of networks. Tomorrow at 7, it is Monday Night Baseball presented by USAA, one of the oldest rivalries in the game, the Cubs and the Cardinals. The Dodgers are at Yankee Stadium for Wednesday Night Baseball, brought to you by T-Mobile. That's on ESPN2. And then 1 week from tonight, we will have a rematch of the 2011 World Series, the Texas Rangers and the St. Louis Cardinals. And if all goes according to plan, it looks like, Crucky, we could have Yu Darvish and Adam Wainwright pitching in that game.
Yeah, two great things about that pitching matchup, Dan, is both are great pitchers, and two, could be a quick game.
Swing and a miss by LINCECUM, a ball and a strike. LINCECUM 1 for 22 this year.
It's actually kind of nice to see that. Those are about the only numbers Tim LINCECUM has that I could compare to.
Do you know what your lifetime batting average was in the majors?
It was.
What was the first digit?
A 1.
It was a 1?
Oh,
okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
So
a
that's
strong
fair.
1.
A strong 1, okay. So you're better than you're giving yourself credit for.
No, not really.
151 is what we're told. That's a strong 1. That's just on the strong side of 1.
Yeah, okay.
Did you hit one out?
You know what? Let's not really. Here's the problem. No, as a pitcher, I didn't hit a home run, which is not a big deal until you consider the fact that I had over 700 at bats. I don't know what happened. I thought I could hit in high school, but it didn't translate.
This is the big leagues.
Yeah.
When when you got into your own as a hitter, you went to the American League and got DH for
Yeah, but here's the problem. At 6'4", 235. I was like a punch. I wasn't even a punch and Judy hitter. I was just a Judy. It was uncomfortable.
So you're like Evan Gaddis big, but without the same pop.
Well, I want to know when he weighed 235. That's
when I got drafted out of high school.
Okay.
So you guys were teammates a few years back in Philadelphia, right?
Oh yeah.
Lots of stories, none of which you can tell.
No.
No, absolutely not. No, not from that Phillies team.
That was an interesting bunch you guys had there.
Interesting is a good word for it.
And you were two of the more interesting people on that team.
Well, no,
actually, you might not even have been.
Not even close. Actually, we were like the normal guys for the most part.
And that speaks to how interesting that bunch was,
It was,
I guess. Yeah.
Tell you what, though, there was never a dull moment. You know, one day it might be hugs, one day someone might hit you in the mouth. It's just the way it was.
But the thing about it, at 7:05 every night, we were 25. We were the best team in baseball. Us, the 25 guys that put on that uniform, no matter how we felt about each other, at 10:01. At 7:05, we were good.
And we were a sabermetician's dream, and we didn't even know it.
You walked. I looked up your 93s. You walked 111 times.
Yeah, we walked a lot. We got on base a lot. Lenny scored 143 runs that year.
With 4 guys walk 100 times.
Swing and a miss to get LINCECUM 2 down.
I like to think that late 90s Yankee team, you could shut them out and need 130 pitches in 5 innings. That was the same way our lineup was. And we had 5 starters that made all of our the starts.
That never happens.
It doesn't.
No.
We avoided major injury.
Yep.
And that's the thing, Dan. You know, we didn't sit in the clubhouse and say, "Hey, let's work this guy. Let's try to get his pitch count up." That's just the way we were. They just happened to find, 10, 11 guys that's the way we.
That nobody else wanted.
Pretty much, yeah. It's one way of looking at it.
Who was the most normal guy on that team? The guy who probably said more than anybody else, "What am I doing with this bunch of wackos?"
Eisenreich.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Eisenreich, if I remember correctly, on the first day of spring training, a half hour in, threatened to shoot John with a bow.
Yeah, he had a bow and arrow in his.
What'd you do to him?
He talked to him.
Yeah. I made a comment about his
condition.
0-1 the count on Blanco. Tehran looking to strike out the side potentially here in the third.
Oh.
Just missed.
But see, that right there, that's a good miss. Watch him. When you're watching him throw his ball to both sides of the plate, when he's going away, he's missing away. When he goes in, he misses in. Those are good misses, and misses you can use to set up the next pitch.
Got some giddy up on his fastball. And as a hitter, Crucky, the difference between 90 and 94, is that significant?
Substantial,
Yep.
yes,
Yep.
because at 94 you have to be very aware of his off-speed pitches, his breaking balls, changeup. At 90, you still have to be aware of them, but you know you can get to them if you set on 90.
The other thing I really like about him from his delivery perspective, he's got a very nice tempo. His tempo says, nice and relaxed, here comes an 85-mile-an-hour, boom, it's on you. And this is, for me, a young power pitcher that has tempo. It's hard to teach, it's hard to get comfortable. He's coming at you as if he's throwing the ball 85 miles an hour, and the ball jumps out of his hand, and I would gonna guess the last 10 feet of his ball gets on you very, very quickly.
That's the one he got Blanco to chase his first at bat. That two-strike breaking ball chased in the dirt. He tried it again, and smart, you come back to it. Did you ever notice that? Like if you threw a good breaking ball and a guy check swung, you think, okay, he wants to swing at it. Let's try it again.
That happened more for me with my fastball. I had very marginal breaking stuff, except for my split, which was a ball all the time. So for me, it was more noticing a fastball in a certain spot.
Tried with it again.
The most impressive thing about that right there is not that he did it back to back to back, it's that he hit his spot back to back to back with a breaking ball.
And now 3-2, 2 outs. This is a fastball away, and see how far he can try to hit it.
Blanco's fouling off the fastballs and taking the pitches down and in that Tehran's trying to get him to chase.
Well, you saw McCann there sitting down and away, but the velocity at 95, that might be the hardest one he's thrown all day, and Blanco still couldn't get to it. I mean, you see McCann sitting down and away, and Tehran pulls it over the center of the plate, and that's pretty much center cut thigh high that Blanco still couldn't get to.
The young right-hander strikes out the side. Some of the big lumber coming up. Hayward, Upton, and Freeman due up for the Braves. Welcome back to Atlanta. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. The Braves leading the Giants 1-0. The run coming in the first on a 2-out RBI single by Freddie Freeman, who's due up third this inning. Jason Hayward will lead it off against Tim Lincecum. Hayward was hitting 121 in April, third week of April, when he underwent an emergency appendectomy. Missed about 3 weeks and is hitting 273 since he's come back. And I think from month to month, year to year, I think more than most other players, people look at this guy and say, what exactly is Jason Hayward and what is his ceiling? There are times where you look at him and say, well, this guy should be a perennial all-star. And then there are times when he goes into deep, deep slumps.
Yeah, when you look at his size, you would think, okay, he should be a 30-homer, 100 RBI guy every year, hit for a high average because he has the ability to hit the other way. And it just doesn't materialize for some reason other than, you know, pitch selection, chasing bad pitches, getting himself out. I mean, the tools are there, Dan, to be a superstar. It's just, you know, when is it going to click in?
And Joe Lincecum, for the third inning in a row, has walked the leadoff.
Well, and the frustrating part about that is 3 of those pitches were fastballs. Well, like Crucky mentioned early in the game, the first 2 were fastballs into a lefty. He couldn't hit his spot, couldn't come close to hitting his spot. When you miss close to your spot, sometimes you get swings. When you miss that badly, you're sitting 2-0, 3-0.
And then the thing is, he walked Brian McCann, who's hitting 6, so he had the bottom of the order to get through. When he walked Simmons at the top, he ended up scoring, and now he walks Freeman, or Hayward, the second hitter. Now he has the meat of the order to try to negotiate around it.
Swing and a miss by Justin Upton. Upton hit a fly ball to deep left center in the first inning, and a terrific running catch by Gregor Blanco right up against the fence in deep left center. Saved Lincecum from a worse first inning than he had.
He throws him another fastball strike in that spot, it's going to be 3-0. And I was wrong. That was right down the middle. That's surprising to me that he would swing. Again, he's 90-91. I was worse than wrong. That ball was center cut right there. You saw that fall off right there. He falls off to the left. He reaches back, throws that ball as hard as he can, 91 miles an hour. And again, if he could just relax and make a pitch there, because you've seen him give a couple 0-2 situations early on where the ball's up in the zone and he's given up some hits.
Oh. Well, we've talked a lot about Tim Lincecum's velocity. Let's show you what the numbers say that his average fastball was over the last several years. You go back to his first Cy Young year, which was 2008, and he was at 94 miles an hour. But he's down to 90 now, 5 years later.
I don't know that I can explain it. It's probably easier for Crockett to explain how big of a deal and a difference that is.
Well, the difference is at 94, you have to start early. At 90, you don't have to start as early. And when you watch Tim Lincecum pitch in his Cy Young years, he got a lot of swings and misses at balls that bounce in front of home plate because you're committed to that hard fastball. Now, guys, they're not swinging at that pitch as much, and now he has to come into the strike zone to try to get guys out.
Softly hit up the middle, and they will force the lead runner Hayward. Upton reaches on the fielder's choice.
I had a conversation with Doc Holliday before he ended up getting hurt, and I found it very interesting because he a couple starts before the end, he said, listen, I've stopped game planning for the stuff that I used to have and started the game plan for the stuff I have now. And that to me is if Timmy can turn that corner, because you're counting on the field for this. He's got a lot of innings, a lot of experience to make the adjustments.
Here's Freddie Freeman, who hurt him with an RBI single in the first. You just don't expect, I would imagine, Kurt, as a pitcher, to have to deal with these kinds of things when you're 29. This is more like when you're 37.
I mean, I went through surgery, so but at this is where you should be hitting your peak in prime. And I would tell you that for me, the reason is mechanically. Timmy Lincecum is a very different mechanical guy pitching, and it's a taxing delivery.
How frustrating is it as a pitcher when you're throwing 94 and you're getting swings and misses on your changeup and breaking ball in the dirt like Lincecum was in his Cy Young years, to now guys are taking it.
Well, there's a pride piece to this. And that was what Doc was saying. He said, I have to understand I'm not the same guy I was. And if I don't want to keep getting beat, I've got to adjust.
Well, and that's what some of the hitters I talked to in the National League East said about Roy Halladay is, you know, can he get guys out in the strike zone now? Because he has to pitch in the zone. You know, before with his unbelievable stuff that he had, you know, being one of the best pitchers over the last 10 years, you know, he got a lot of swings and misses out of the zone, and now guys can take it because it's not 95 anymore. It's 89, 90.
And here's the other piece to this. We're in the bottom of the third inning. He's at 54 pitches. He's had to work very, very hard to get this far.
And is it a telltale sign that he's got no 2 on a lot of hitters and he can't put them away?
Well, that was for me. That was the indicator for me. Was I lost the ability to stop making hitters swing and miss, and I realized it with a pitcher at the plate. I had about a 13-pitch at bat with a pitcher. I couldn't make him swing and miss my fastball, and I was like, okay, something's got to change.
Good hitting pitcher.
And he wasn't a good hitting pitcher.
Runner goes, and it's fouled off by Freeman. Braves trying to take advantage of the problems that Lincecum and Posey have had shutting down the running game. They've already got 1 steal tonight. That from Simmons. Atlanta's only stolen 21 bases on the season, 22 with the 1 tonight. But they see the numbers, and they're going to try to grab a few in this game. Base hit through the right side. Freeman's 2 for 2. Justin Upton to second. And that'll bring up Justin's brother, B.J. Upton, who's been mired in a terrible slump this year. But last night, maybe some signs of breaking out. Got the ball down where he likes it, where he can handle it, and hit not 1, but 2 home runs. And over the last 10 games, Kruk, he is hitting .250. That's not all that much, but it's actually raised his average coming into the game tonight to 166. He's at 165.
Yeah, it's a lot
now.
better than the 150 he came into the game. And you know, you look at both of those pitches, they were basically in the same place by Chad Gaudin, and that's his hot spot.
Speaking of which, let's take a look at B.J. Upton's hot zone, brought to you by T-Mobile.
He has one hot zone where if you throw it in there, he's got a great chance at hitting over 350 in that red zone, and all the other Blues are under 250. And they threw him 2 pitches down and in, and he went and got both of them.
That's a reverse left-handed hitter's box right there. You don't see many right-handed hitters. I remember Phil Nevin of the Padres was just a tremendous down hitter. The problem is you can work. There's a lot of areas to work outside of that zone.
And he threw him one down there, and it's hit hard into left field, and Torres can't find it. Justin Upton in to score. Freeman to third. B.J. Upton into second. 2-0 Braves.
Well, this is a welcome sign for the Freddie Gonzalez and the Atlanta Braves. Yeah, hitting Justin up, or B.J. Upton 5th in this lineup, who's been struggling all year. He comes up with this big hit, but look at the difference in his swing from the first time we saw him to now. All he's doing now is picking up that foot and placing it down, and he's always on that front foot. The timing is a lot better because it's hitting the ground before the pitch is getting in the hitting zone, and all he now does is react with his hands. And you see the pitch. It's headed right for Posey's glove, down in the strike zone, and that's the hit. That's the ball that B.J. Upton can get to right now. And Lincecum makes a mistake. He throws it pretty much center cut, middle in, down, and Upton goes out and gets it. It didn't look like Torres picked up that ball well off the bat. It looked like he wanted to try to catch it, and he backed off of it and short hopped it, and now Upton's on second and Freeman's on third. And the Braves are looking at a big inning.
They're going to walk McCann to load the bases and set up a potential double play with Chris Johnson coming up if Lincecum can get him to hit a ball on the ground. Let's go down to the field and join Buster Olney.
Guys, I asked B.J. Upton about the adjustment he made with his foot. He said, you know, I don't even know what I'm doing with my foot. I'm just trying to get it down and then letting it go, as Crucky said.
All right, Buster, thank you. So a real change for B.J. Upton in recent days. You know, look at the Braves offense. We've talked about how dependent they are on the home run. They've got B.J. Upton hitting in the 160s, Dan Uggla hitting in the 160s. Jason Hayward's gotten hot to get up into the 210s. But if Freddie Gonzalez's team can string some hits together and score without the benefit of a home run, that kind of bodes well for them in October, should they get to October.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When you're facing really good pitching that can locate, that's a nightmare for the Atlanta Braves because of their inability to put balls in play on a regular basis. But if they can figure it out and figure out ways to put balls in play, score runs without hitting homers, they're going to be a force, you know, not only in the regular season but even into the postseason.
Good block by Posey. A ball and a strike on Chris Johnson.
One of the issues that you start to see with a guy that's good and starts to struggle is this right here. You're going to see the ball to left. Look at Tim Lincecum right here. His first move right there should be backing home plate up, being behind home plate. He's standing in the middle of the infield. You start to get away from the things that make big league pitchers, and it's a frustration more than anything for him.
1-2.
That's got to be the frustrating part. That you see the glimpses, right? I mean, he's making them swing and miss in different places, and then all of a sudden, it breaks down.
And he's now at 68 pitches in the third inning.
You can see his jersey is a little different color than his pants.
Yep.
That's a lot of work in not a hot day, but it's not cool, Dan, with the ties on.
No. This is the hottest bullpen in baseball down there.
Foul ball. Yeah, the Kruk thermometer doesn't like it up in the 80s at all. Huh?
He's not even fond of the 70s, Dan.
And Jake Dunning is up in the bullpen. Early activity here for Bruce Bochy and the Giants. If Dunning comes in, it would be a major league debut. And missing badly. It's a full count.
For his first at bat, Johnson got a fastball in. He hit the blue base hit to left field, got jammed. First pitch in this at bat, fastball in for a strike he took. Then the second strike he got in was a fastball up and in that he swung through. If I'm Chris Johnson, I'm looking fastball in, and I'm going to try to do some damage right here.
Ground ball to short. Double play to end the inning. How big was that for Tim Lincecum? Braves, though, get a run. Lead 2-0 at the end of 3. Welcome back to Sunday Night Baseball, presented by Taco Bell. With John Kruk, Kurt Schilling, Buster Olney, I'm Dan Schulman. Turner Field in Atlanta, the Braves and Giants. Atlanta leading 2-0. Come from behind to win for the Braves last night. And a shutout victory for the Giants on Friday night. A terrific performance by Madison Bumgarner, developing into one of the very best pitchers in baseball. There's another good young pitcher in Julio Teheran, who's been impressive through 3. He's given up 1 hit, hasn't walked a batter, and he has struck out 5, including the last 4 batters he's faced. And this is a big inning for him. LINCECUM gets out of the bases loaded jam. You know, the Giants have to be feeling really good about themselves, only being down 2 runs. And a strike to Brandon Crawford. Crawford hit .248 last year, hitting .292 now. Crucky talked about how he was moved up from the bottom of the order to the 2 spot with all the injuries the Giants have right now. And a very good defensive player as well. And it has to be a more comfortable spot to hit, hitting 2nd instead of 8th in the National League. The 8th hitter in the National League, especially a young player like Crawford, you never know. Are they pitching to me or are they pitching around me to get to the pitcher? Here, you know, with Posey behind him, he's going to get pitched to.
I still think that was one of the most shocking things to me getting to the big leagues in the National League, was just how hard it was to hit 8th. You actually had to put a good hitter in the 8 hole because of what that spot in the order meant.
Two and two. But as soon as the regulars come back, Bruce Bochy probably moves Crawford back down. If Scudero's fine, he's going to be the 2 hitter. Strike 3 called. 5 straight strikeouts for Teheran. And that'll bring up Buster Posey. We talked about some of his accomplishments when he came up last time. What a 2012 he had after that devastating injury in 2011. He comes back to win the batting title, hitting .336. An easy choice as comeback player of the year, and a worthy recipient as the National League MVP as well. Also won Rookie of the Year. He's won 2 World Series. Not a bad first 4 years in the big leagues, huh?
I just keep thinking about Derek Jeter when I see it from in all the respectful ways, and from a presence perspective. Obviously a very different position as a catcher on the pitching staff, but everything he does makes me he's just a very classy guy the way he plays the game.
And he lines it into right center. Hayward over to cut it off and hold Posey to a 1-out single.
Oh, that's a beautiful thing about Buster Posey. He has enormous power, but he also has the ability to hit for a high average. That's how he won a batting title. And here Teheran throws that fastball you see running in on Posey. And you know, how do you get the barrel to the bat? Figure out how I can get the barrel to the bat as much as possible. That pitch is running in. You see the glove of McCann reaching in to try to catch that ball. Posey just pulls his hands in, shoots it the other way for the base hit. If he got it off the barrel a little more, probably would have been in the gap for a double. There's nothing he can't do with a bat in his hand.
And another good Jeter comparison there, right? Keeping his hands inside, driving it the other way. Here's Hunter Pence. Hit a fly ball to center his first time up. Popped up shallow right. 2 down.
Well, here's what we're talking about, Dan, and this is why a guy hits .330, and he also has the ability to hit for power also when he's looking in. But this is a pitch that just rides in on him. You know, pitch is supposed to be away. It rides in on him. A lot of guys in this situation will get jammed, hit a little blooper to the infield. But look at Posey's hands, how far out in front of the ball they are, keeping the barrel back in the hitting zone. His barrel stayed in the hitting zone. That's how he hit that ball the other way. If his bat goes with his hands, he's either going to hook that foul and hit Tim Flannery coaching third, or he's going to get jammed and hit a pop-up to either Johnson or Simmons.
2 down for Brandon Belt. And he golfs one into right field, a base hit. Posey on his way to third on a long two-out single. Belt safely back into first.
Well, a lot of things in this went right for the Giants and for the Atlanta Braves, saving a run. And you talk about the little things in the game, to keep pitchers' ERAs down, but keep your team ahead in the game. Belt hits this ball down the right field line. Hayward makes a great play to get over and cut it off before it can get to the wall. Posey's running hard, but the throw comes into second base and Pena. He makes a bad throw, a bounce throw to Freeman, and instead of trying to glove it, he gets over in front of it like a catcher, blocks it, keeps in front of him, and Tim Flannery has to keep Posey at third. The little things to keep runs off the board, that could end up being big right here.
Depending on what Andres Torres does as he takes a breaking ball in for a strike.
One of the things I try to talk about when I talk to young pitchers is the leadoff hitter. When you get that first out of the inning, you're always one pitch away, no matter where the runners are, from being out of the inning.
So far tonight, Tehran is 4 for 4 getting the leadoff hitter. Lincecum's 0 for 3.
And for the most part, when you look over the course of a season, it never fails. The majority of the runs, almost all of the crooked number innings you have as a pitcher, start with the leadoff hitter getting on.
And how about with in this most stressful situation he's been in the 4 innings he's pitched, or 3 2/3, with runners on first and third, he jumps ahead 0-2 in the count.
He's staying inside himself, and he's executing pitches. He's not trying to overthrow the ball.
We've seen that a lot. Not afraid to come inside off speed to the left-handed batter.
It was a pitch I would have loved to have been able. Never ever could throw it. That cutter slider into a left-hander. Such an incredibly hard pitch to consistently command, but devastating when you can get it there consistently.
Thing I like about when he threw it 0-2, but the 0-1 pitch was a fastball in that Torres got jammed and flared. So now you think, okay, he has to speed himself up. You throw that slider down and in. Even if he hits it, it's going to be a slow roller to Freeman.
And that's when I talk about missing good and bad. When you miss to the side you're throwing to, that's a fastball away there that was on the plate that he was late on because of the balls that he missed and threw in on him.
Bounces in a breaking ball. McCann, one of 3 catchers on the Atlanta roster. Gerald Laird and, of course, Evan Gattis, one of the early season sensations. The 26-year-old who's just clubbing home runs. Has lost some of his regular playing time with McCann getting healthy, but has become a lethal force off the bench, Krug.
It's an absolute weapon to have. When you have a guy, he's a game changer off your bench. Hey, you look at his pinch hitting numbers: 6 for 8, 4 homers, 11 RBIs as a pinch hitter. I mean, and that's the thing we talked about Freddie. He has to be very smart when he uses him. He can't use him with a base open because they're probably going to walk him, depending on who's sitting behind him, of course. But he's become a weapon that other teams have to be careful of late in the game. My first year in the big leagues, the third base coach for the Giants, Tim Flannery, told me about pinch hitting, because that's what I did for the first month and a half that I was in the big leagues. He said, if you hit 250 as a pinch hitter, you've done a great job. How's 750 working?
He's got more pinch hit home runs than any team this year. Any other team. Runner goes from first. 3-2, bounced foul.
Well, the great thing about that, Krug will tell you, as a hitter, if you're a good pinch hitter, you can extend your career 4, 5, 6, 7 years. You can make a career, 15-year career out of it if you could do it, because it's such a hard thing to do. Because you're not getting anybody's second stuff. You're facing a guy who's lefty, power righty.
Ball 4, bases loaded.
For almost one of the first pitches tonight, you saw him overthrow the ball, fall off to the left, and try and overthrow the ball instead of making a pitch.
So Posey's at third. Belt now up to second. Torres at first. 2 down. And the batter is Joaquin Arias, who struck out his first time up.
You didn't walk a lot of guys, but what was the mindset if you walked the guy to load the bases? Are you thinking, oh my gosh, I got to throw this first pitch in for a strike or else this could be a long one?
As I got older, my mindset changed. As soon as the walk happened, I was on to the next guy. What do I need to do? What do I need to pitch? Ahead, behind, even? How do I start this guy? All the things that had to do with the hitter at the plate.
What about
when
22
I was young,
or 23?
I just tried to throw the ball a little bit harder.
Inside, close, but no. You could see Tehran's body language. He thought he was going to get the call there. Paul Emmel disagreed. Little looper. Caught out in left field. Justin Upton saves a couple of runs. Outstanding play by Justin Upton, and the Braves still have the lead. Baseball, presented by Taco Bell, is brought to you by Lunesta Ezopiclone. Bottom 4, Braves 2, Giants nothing. Time now for some FaceTime, brought to you by Edward Jones. Buster Olney with Bruce Bochy.
Bruce, why do you think Tim has struggled so much early?
You know, it's a hard one to answer. I mean, he's fighting himself out tonight, and you know, sometimes you hit these trends that are hard to explain, but you know, a couple starts ago, he was right on. Now in these 2 road games, he's just having a hard time getting the ball where he wants.
He's at 71 pitches now. What are you hoping to get out of him for the rest of tonight?
It'd be nice to get a couple more innings out of him, but at this point, you know, you have that many pitches, you're on a short leash, so we'll keep a good eye on him.
Bruce, thanks.
And Bruce Bochy did have the bullpen up. Jake Dunning in the 3rd inning as LINCECUM was in trouble. But then he got a big double play ball off the bat of Chris Johnson to end the inning. But that pitch right there, if you haven't been with us tonight, Kurt, he's probably missed up there 10, 12 times tonight.
Yeah, and he's missed not just with his fastball. He's missed with his fastball, his changeup. And again, it's a byproduct of his mechanics,
which were seen as such a sensation and almost revolutionary in a way when it came
They
out.
were eccentric and different.
Yeah.
For me, if you look, and they are now. They're extreme. For a guy of his size to have to put that much effort into every pitch, your body's just not built to do that for an extended period of time.
Facing Ramiro Pena to lead off the 4th.
Here is this is what if you've seen Ubaldo Jimenez pitch, for the older fans out there who've seen Rick Sutcliffe, if you watch his hand when he brings his hand out of the glove right here. See that now that's not a problem right now if the first thing you do is bring it back that way, but he doesn't. He brings it up, and so when he comes to the plate, he's throwing the ball to the plate with the front side, with his front of his shoulder. And it's incredibly taxing. The analogy I always use is a rubber band. If you pull a rubber band back and forth really fast, it's fine. If you extend it and stretch it really hard, it loses its elasticity faster. That's what happens when you throw the ball with the front side of your body.
Popped up. Out number one. ESPN's exclusive coverage of the Confederations Cup live from Brazil continues tomorrow. At 5:45 Eastern Time, Tahiti takes on Nigeria tomorrow on ESPN and also live on Watch ESPN.
To finish that point, Dan, the biggest thing for me is that's what made his run so amazing. With those mechanics and his build to be as good as he was, and I think still can be.
Tehran grounds out, 2 down. And forgive us, the soccer match is at 2:45 Eastern tomorrow, not 5:45. The 2 quick outs is the first time that LINCECUM's gotten the first out in an inning tonight. Never mind 2 in a row. He'll try to have a quick inning, and he could really use it after all the energy he's expended in the first 3 innings. It'll be Simmons who has walked and flied out.
If he can get Simmons out here in a quick at bat, he could extend himself to another inning.
Well, a lot of break on that pitch. 0-2.
I honestly think Boch was hoping to get him through 5. If he could get it through this, I think now you're looking possibly he could go through 6 if he gets a quick at bat here.
And it will be a quick inning. 3 up, 3 down, 10 pitches, 4 in the books. Braves up 2-0. Braves 2, Giants nothing as we go to the top of the 5th here in Atlanta. Time now for some FaceTime brought to you by Edward Jones, Buster Olney with Atlanta manager Freddie Gonzalez.
Freddie, you guys have had a ton of base runners, 2 runs so far. How are you feeling about your approach against LINCECUM?
Well, the approach is good, but we need to put a crooked number up in one of those frames. Gotta, you wiggled out of a bases loaded situation, second and third, but we can't keep him hanging around. We got to put a big number up here.
Now, when ARIAS popped that ball up to left field, bases loaded, what do you think the chances were that Justin was going to get there?
Well, I didn't, it's a tough play, but he made a hell of a catch. He really gained ground on it, and he sold out and made a great play.
Freddie, thanks.
And underway in the 5th, a base hit into center field for Nick Noonan. Well, that may turn out to be the biggest play of the game. 2-run score if Upton doesn't make this catch.
Never thought he had a chance of catching that ball, but he closed on that one really quick. And the thing is, BJ was right behind him to back it up. So I don't know if 2 runs definitely would have scored. But if it gets past him and BJ's not backing him up, 3 could have scored on that one.
LINCECUM shows bunt and takes a strike. LINCECUM does have 4 sacrifices on the season. I would imagine, Kurt, when you're a pitcher and things aren't going that well on the mound, the other elements of the game become that much more important. You want to salvage something out of a tough night here.
Well, it can go a couple different ways. You saw that play where he stood in the middle of the infield on the ball, and you start to. You don't want to get into a woe is me mindset, but you have to be ready to do the little things that can help you, and this is one of them.
And he'll get it done.
Good bunt.
3-4 on the putout. The sacrifice for LINCECUM moves Noonan to second.
Especially in the National League, that's a situation. If you can't handle the bat, you'll be out in the 6th inning instead of getting the chance. So you don't get a chance. You don't have a chance to win as many games.
So a runner at second, 1 out for the Giants. And back to the top of the order for Gregor Blanco as LINCECUM accepts congratulations for the sacrifice. The Giants don't strike out much. They came into the game having struck out 199 times fewer than Atlanta. But Tehran has 6 strikeouts already in this game. Giants right now at 35-32. Arizona, the leaders in the National League West, lost again today to San Diego. Maybe Bruce Bochy is checking out the out-of-town scoreboard up there and saying, man, the Padres won again.
His old team.
They have won 6 in a row. The Rockies are a half game out. But the Rockies, of course, are now playing without Troy Tulowitzki for an extended period of time on the DL with a broken rib. So everybody but the Dodgers is in the race right now, but with the amount of time left and nobody breaking away from the pack, it could be a 5-team race.
Yeah, you hate to say that the Dodgers are out of it, but they have dug themselves quite a hole. But they're going to get some guys healthy soon, and who knows with that team what they can do, what they're capable of doing. We don't know yet. But it's not a great division, but every team's equal in my opinion.
Back to second goes Noonan, and out at first is Blanco. Tricky little play.
Well, that was a play there that Simmons thought, maybe I can tag Noonan out getting back to the base, and once he realized he couldn't do it, he couldn't throw around him, so he had to run in front of him. And this is a guy who trusts a great arm, and Simmons has a great arm. You see Noonan right there trying to get away, didn't want the ball to hit him, and then you see Simmons try to get. He wants to make a throw right now, and he can't because Noonan's in the way, and he has to wait. Then just a quick flick of the wrist. They say he could throw 96 miles an hour? Yeah. That was probably 90.
He was considered as much of a pitcher as he was a shortstop when he was drafted. The 2 outs, Noonan at second, and here's Crawford. 0 for 2, ground out and strikeout.
And that's a ball that the ball that Blanco hit was a ball that Noonan got a bad read on. If he breaks immediately for third base, there's no way Simmons can catch and throw that far away and get him out. He probably wouldn't even attempt it with one out. Take the shore out at first and get two. That moves Noonan to third. Now a wild pitch can score him, but now he's on second. You got to get a hit.
Maybe a play. And there is for Johnson down the line to end the inning. To the bottom of the fifth, heart of the order for the Braves, already leading 2-0. Here they come at the bottom of the fifth. The Braves up 2-0 on the Giants, and some of their best hitters are due up this inning, including Justin Upton, who's on deck. Freddie Freeman due up third. Jason Hayward leads it off. He has flied out and walked. A run in the first on an RBI single by Freeman. A run in the third on an RBI double by B.J. Upton. All of a sudden, Lincecum's become a strike-throwing machine last inning and on the first two pitches of this inning.
I think wiggling out of that bases-loaded jam with one out, that gives you a lot of confidence now that, okay, now I can go. And he's given Bruce Bochy what he's wanted. It hasn't been great, but he's going to give him at least 5 innings.
Over to cover in time for out number one. And you look around the rest of the Giants rotation, this has been not only their strength, it's been their identity, Kurt, over the last few years. I mean, whether it's Kane, Lincecum at his best, then Kane, now Bumgarner. Bumgarner's having a great year. Kane's getting better, but the strength top to bottom of the rotation is not what it's been.
It's not. Kane and Bumgarner, you could put up there with almost any 1-2 when they're both healthy, and I think when Matt is throwing really well, it was kind of dreamy when you thought Lincecum was going to be part of that 3. You know, Barry Zito's, well, you know, he's in a different place now. And Madison, I saw the game the other night. I thought he was as dominating as I've seen any lefty in the National League this year.
Very high for ball 2. Bumgarner on the season is 6-4 with a 3.30 ERA, but he's given up only 66 hits in 90 innings. Kane got off to an atypical start for him, a sluggish start, but he's pitching better of late. Still has an ERA of 4.70. That's the ERA exactly that Lincecum lugged into this game. Barry Zito's at 479, and Ryan Vogelsong is on the DL with a broken hand. He was over 7 when he went to the DL. Chad Gaudin has filled in and has started 3 games for the Giants. There's another walk issued by Lincecum. Let's go down to Buster Olney.
Guys, around the batting cage today, there was a debate. Who's got a better throwing arm, Freddie Freeman or Andrelton Simmons? And Jason Hayward was taken up for Freddie Freeman, said, hey, this guy pitched in high school. And Freddie Freeman will tell you the last pitch that he threw in high school was at 97 miles per hour, and that he was mostly scouted as a pitcher. We saw how good Simmons' throwing arm is, though. And, Crucky, you can appreciate this. He told me, Freeman did, that when Simmons throws to first, it is a true four-seam row over the top, no tail, no sail, every throw perfect.
Yeah, we love those guys. But Freddie Freeman never told Buster what happened to that 97-mile-an-hour pitch. Was it strike 3 to end the game? Was it a walk-off homer? Who knows? He can do that, though.
He is 3 for 3. Up to second on the play goes Justin Upton.
I mean, you look at his 3 at-bats, Dan. His first at-bat, he had a runner on second base, runner in scoring position. Great chance to pitch around him to get the B.J. Upton behind him. He hits it the other way for the RBI. Now he has Justin Upton on first base. His last 2 at-bats, he pulls balls into the hole. I mean, that's just a smart hitter. Look how he gets out in front of that ball. He rolls over that top end because he's trying to hook it into that hole to try to get a first and third situation. Problem is he hit it just a little bit too hard, and Justin Upton couldn't get the third. But that's a guy who he should be a 300, 320 hitter every single season.
And again, the Braves doing some things tonight they don't normally do. Multiple base runners, stringing hits together, driving in runs without the benefit of a home run. Swing and a miss by B.J. Upton. As we mentioned earlier, the Braves this year are 3-19 when they don't hit a home run. Now, we're only partway through, but they haven't hit one tonight. They've got the lead. They could have more than the 2 runs they've got. Upton, even with the RBI double last time up, still hitting under 100 on the year with runners in scoring position. And another pitch where Lincecum is 2-3 feet up above the strike zone.
Well, that's an NCP, a non-competitive pitch, and that's the challenge. You can't throw those in the big leagues with any consistency and get an effect. And it gets back to the fact he's trying to overthrow the ball. He needs to ease back and just command it down.
Line to center. And a Blanco there for the catch. 2 down. Bullpen activity again for the Giants. We saw Dunning up in the 3rd. Now left-hander Jose Mijares is up here in the 5th. Lincecum nearing 100 pitches. And as Bruce Bochy told Buster Olney a couple of innings ago, on a short leash.
The challenge for me as a coach or a manager, I'm very biased about pitching. I want my pitchers to feel good about themselves. So this is an outing where he could walk out and feel a little okay. I battled. I kept it 2-0. A hit away from being miserable for 4 days.
Change up for a strike. Yeah, in a sense, it's almost the Braves who should be kicking themselves right now that they don't have a bigger lead in this game.
This has got a very Bruins-Blackhawks first period feel to it.
I want to thank you. That's the first hockey reference any Sunday Night Analyst has made so far this year. 0-2, another changeup.
That right there, that's why you don't walk away from him. He can do things that make you see his ability to make people swing and miss. Just wish he could keep it as consistent.
Lincecum's got it. Nice. And the inning is over. He gets out of a jam. Still 2-0 at the end of 5, and the reigning National League MVP will lead it off when we come back. around the major leagues, including Chris Davis hitting his major league leading 23rd home run of the season, and Carlos Gonzalez his National League leading 20th home run of the season, and Torrey Hunter reaching a nice milestone with career home run number 300 in the Tigers' victories. They beat Minnesota 5-2, and in that Tigers game, by the way, Joaquin Benoit picked up the save, his 4th of the season. Here in Atlanta, the first place Braves lead the Giants 2-0 as we go to the 6th. 22-year-old Julio Teheran will face Posey, Pence, and Belt.
You think Jimmy Leland got some questions after the game about his new closer?
I'm sure he was more than happy to discuss at length.
Jose Valverde was doing just fine when he came up this year, but it went south in a hurry. Benoit getting the save today. And you can make a case, guys, that how Detroit's 9th inning situation plays itself out. That's really one of the biggest stories, I think, in baseball the rest of the way. If they get somebody, whoever it is, who can close games for them, I mean, they're as good as anybody.
They really are. And, you know, they got power arms in the bullpen. You know that what their rotation can bring. And, I mean, that offense is as scary as any I've seen.
And the Tigers with a 4.5 game lead over the Indians in the American League Central. Cleveland picking up a win today, defeating Washington 2-0.
Crucky, what's the most surprising team right there for you in that division? In the Central.
You like Kansas City? You think this is real when they've won 10 out of 12?
I worry about their offense. You know, and you know, even though George Brett took over, they're still not scoring a ton of runs. You know, can that pitching hold up all year? I mean, to me, Detroit's surprising because they're not 10 games up right now.
This is the same thing we said last year as Posey lines a base hit into left field. Remember, Detroit actually was behind the White Sox until about 10 days were left in the season.
And that, to me, so I look at that division, and you know, I didn't expect Cleveland to be that good, and I think maybe they're coming back there. At the Royals, I'm a little surprised. I'm stunned that the White Sox are that bad. I didn't expect them. I didn't expect them to run away with the division. I didn't expect them to be, you know, struggling that badly, especially with Ventura as the manager and the talent that they have. I thought they were going to do a little bit better early on.
And Minnesota, to me, playing better than I thought they would.
Do you see any chance that one of the wild card teams comes out of the Central?
Not with Houston in the West. No, I think Houston being in the West is going to give the.
So one comes out of the West and the other one comes out of the East.
Maybe.
Fouled off by Pence.
Yeah, I think the East is going to have at least one. And Texas and Oakland. Let's just start the playoffs now. We got it all figured out.
No reason to play the second half.
Braves get a bye. They have.
Well, Bruce Bochy doesn't want to start them now because they wouldn't be in it. Pence lines the ball to right field. Posey puts the brakes on around second, and the Giants have the first 2 men on here in the 6th inning.
Well, there's some things you can explain by watching a guy hit and seeing how they do things. That's inexplainable because that's a pitch up out of the strike zone, not a strike. Look at this swing, though. And I give him credit. He stays in, hands inside the ball, all that stuff. But, I mean, that's a hard pitch to get on top of at 94 miles an hour, get on top of and hit a line drive the other way. I mean, that's difficult to do.
Was it Freddie Gonzalez who told us before the game that he fouled one back off Kimbrel that if he hadn't swung at it, he thinks would have gone to the backstop on the fly?
Yeah, he said it would have airmailed everything and hit the backstop, and he put wood on it, fouled it off. And that's, to me, he's probably more difficult to pitch to than anyone in this lineup because you don't know where you can throw it and be safe.
Swing and a miss by Belt, 0-2. Belt is 2 for 2 tonight. Anthony Varvaro is up now in the Atlanta pen.
I want to see him make a pitch here. 0-2. I don't believe in wasting a pitch, but whatever you do, if this is not a pitch to get an out, it's a pitch to set up the out on the next pitch. That's the same thing he just did to Pence. Tried to go to the corner down, overthrew the ball, left it middle up.
Back-to-back base hits by Posey and Pence to begin the 6th inning for the Giants. And we've seen that pitch on many, many occasions tonight.
See, here's when I was talking earlier about good and bad misses. When you saw him miss up and away with that fastball, he tried to come in. He comes back in. If he had thrown that fastball in there before that, you might have had the hitter looking in there, and he gets a pitch in and he chases it. Instead, he's looking middle out because he just got a ball away from him. Good misses and bad misses.
One thing the Giants do well, as we mentioned, they don't strike out a lot, and with 2 strikes, they'll battle you. They'll foul off pitches. They'll come up with hits. They don't have a ton of power, but they will battle you deep into a count. Only 49 home runs on the season for the Giants. Part of that is a function of their ballpark, obviously, which is very tough into which to hit a home run. And overall, their offensive numbers are actually good. They're right there, right around Atlanta, about 5th in the league in runs scored this season. Oh, there's strike 3.
Standing pitch right there. So you're going to watch him here. He's going to get ahead again, just like he did with Hunter, but he's caught between throwing and pitching in a couple different times. Ball up in his zone, overthrew a little bit, but this is where his stuff allows him to get away with some things. He overthrows the 0-2 pitch there, comes back with the cutter in, goes out. Now he's got him thinking both sides, and he paints with the ball at mid-90s. Again, if you watch the finish on the ball, watch him come through the strike zone and finish the pitch. Ball comes out of his hand. He finishes and makes a great pitch.
That was either going to be strike 1 or hit by pitch.
The last pitch to Torres?
That pitch right there. Yeah, it was right at his chest. And
what that tells me as a pitcher, that he's cheating in. You don't swing at a pitch like that unless you're looking in or in off the plate.
Unless you just got fooled real bad.
Well, but I mean, that ball's so close to him, he put a swing on it like he was looking in and got tied up with it, which to me means the outer half of the plate down is open.
Right there. That's a great pitch no matter where you're looking.
and that's really, honestly, in the big leagues, they talk about command and control. The ability to throw a fastball and a fastball count to a fastball hitter when everybody knows you're doing it. It doesn't matter if it's 88 or 90. If you command to that spot, that's an out. That's not a pitch that gets driven anywhere.
Swing and a miss, 2 down.
I think they switch uniforms. The Braves are pecking away with singles and hitting the ball the other way and driving in runs, and now the Giants are just a team that are, they're like the Braves. They're striking out with crucial situations, but this is just perfect pitching. I mean, there's a fastball in. Probably would have hit him in the hip. Like Shill said, he's opened up looking in, so he throws him away, and then he comes right back in with that hard cutter slider pitch right at the back knee of Andres Torres, and that's the toughest pitch in the world to lay off of. Once he's established, he can throw his fastball by you.
Now Arias.
One of the things I learned as a young pitcher, why a lot of guys will chase high fastballs. When a guy is looking for a fastball and he gets it, a lot of times he'll be overly aggressive to swing at it, even if it's not a strike. When you're looking in, like he was looking in, he had to look in. When that ball got in on his hands, he throws a ball in the air, he's looking for it, and he makes it go out of the strike zone and makes it unhittable. That's impressive. That was an impressive at bat.
How much McCann play into that pitch selection right there?
My guess is, given the kid's 22 years old, a lot. I don't know how, from a pregame, how he is. And I honestly thought 2 hitters ago he should have walked out there and just said, hey, take a breath, make a pitch. You're getting ahead. Because he's getting ahead. Take a breath, make a pitch. And he's actually pitched his way out to 2 outs now. Now what you want to do is finish the inning. Because all of that's for naught if he ends up making a mistake here. So keep him on his toes, making a pitch. Yeah, one of the magical things, numbers-wise, is numbers. And you watch him going around the lineup. He gets better as he goes through the game, which is the opposite of a lot of guys in the big leagues. That speaks to his stuff and his baseball IQ.
everybody's safe on an infield hit for Arias that loads the bases. Good effort by Simmons, and by keeping it on the infield, he prevented a run from scoring.
Well, people say, well, strikeouts, it's no big deal. Think about if Belt or Torres put the ball in play and did it into a double play. Posey would be at third. This is a run. Simmons makes a great play to get to that ball. On your bellies is what we say in the infield. If the runner on second base, on your bellies, make a play, knock it down, anything you can to keep that runner from scoring. Simmons does that. He tried to get the bonus plan and get the force at second and threw it past Pena right there, but not far enough for Posey to score on that play. But you go back to the two at-bats by Belt and by Torres. Contact puts Posey on third base, and now that's a run. Instead, now they have the bases loaded and 2 outs. He's going to take another hit to score them.
So Roger McDowell, the pitching coach, is out to the mound. 22-year-old pitcher, bullpen ready, bases loaded, 2 outs. What's the message, Kurt, that you want to give a 22-year-old kid here?
Well, the subliminal message here is what we were talking about earlier. This is a phenomenal day for him. This is probably his last inning. He makes his pitch and get out of here. He's going to feel great about himself. He gives up a hit and gives up the tie game, and you got completely opposing. So this, to me, again, same thing. Calm down. Take a breath, make one pitch at a time.
At first at bat, he struck Noonan out. Second at bat, the first pitch, he hits a single up the middle, and I'm on a fastball. So I'm sure they're going out there saying, "Look, he's sitting first pitch fastball. We have to come up with a better fastball or some other pitch to get him off of it."
Good pitch.
See, now you're a hitter. Even though that's a ball, you're a hitter thinking, "Oh boy, I'm looking fastball. He threw me breaking ball. Now what?" He still doesn't know what's coming.
Fastball lifted in the air to left. And Tehran gets out of it as the Giants leave the bases loaded. Welcome back to Sunday Night Baseball, presented by Taco Bell. Dan Schulman, John Kruk, Kurt Schilling, Buster Olney, Turner Field in Atlanta. And a 2-0 lead for the Braves. Atlanta's left 7 men on through the first 5 innings. And the Giants have left 8 men on through 6 innings tonight. Bottom third of the order, Tim Lincecum back on the mound. After Johnson, it'll be Ramiro Pena, and then Julio Teheran is due up. There is activity in the Atlanta pen. Left-hander Luis Avellan is up. Much different looking bullpen, at least in terms of the roles for some of their relievers, with the injuries to Johnny Venters and Eric O'Flaherty.
And I'm going to go back, gosh, the early 90s. I'm just consistently blown away by what the Braves do from a pitching. Every guy they bring up is not they're very few fringe guys. They're power arms, just like the Cardinals are with everyday players. And they roll one guy after the next.
They find a Medlin, they find a Beachy, they find a Teheran.
But it's a huge kudos to their player development people, scouting and their player development people.
Frank Wren, the executive vice president, general manager of the Atlanta Braves. Beachy, by the way, suffered a bit of a setback in his return from Tommy John surgery. He was to have made a start Tuesday in a doubleheader against the Mets, but that has been pushed back. And right now it sounds like there's no timetable, really. They don't think he's lost for the season or anything, but he's on hold right now as Johnson swings and misses. So they're going to need a starter for the second game of the rotation. And one issue, it's not good news, but if Beachy were to have come back, then they got 6 starters for 5 spots, and they would have had to have figured something out.
That never happens. Yeah. It never, ever happens. Yeah. And the only fear I had, in if I understand everything correctly, he's got fluid on the elbow. And you generally get fluid in the joint when there's a problem. And him coming back, he's a special kid. He's got a good arm. Love to watch him pitch. And I was hoping that, I think they were hoping he was going to be back to kind of even things out for them from a rotation perspective.
Here's Ramiro Pena. So Beachy's on hold. Jordan Schaefer is out in the on-deck circle in Teheran's spot. Some of the possibilities, some of the speculation you would hear that maybe Chris Medlin would go to the pen, maybe that Paul Maholm could get traded. Of course, these are, there's no, this is just speculation.
And when we were talking to Freddie today, he seemed relieved that he didn't have to make that decision on, so soon. And that is a tough one. I mean, you're telling a guy, Chris Medlin, who was your best pitcher last year in the second half of the season, and some people thought could win the Cy Young with a half a season as a starter, and how do you tell him to go back to the bullpen?
Every time we have this conversation, I go back to the Red Sox. Remember, a couple years ago, they were coming out of spring training with 7 starters. They had Wakefield. They couldn't figure out. Last week of the season, they're trying to trade for a pitcher to pitch the final game of the season.
Bruce
you never have enough. It never works out that way.
What about the Dodgers this year?
Exactly.
They went to camp, I think, with 9.
Yep.
As Pena flares one into left field, and it gets through Torres. Heading for third. Base hit and then a 2-base error on Andres Torres.
Now it's such a different inning. Now you see Torres right there. I mean, he just never gets in front of the ball. He plays the ball off his right foot when you should be playing it to the center. And then once it gets past him, Ramiro Pena thought third base all the way. Apparently Torres thought, well, he's going to stop at second, because it wasn't like it was any mode of desperation to try to get the ball in quickly.
So now the infield comes in. Giants already down 2-0. Runner at third, 1 out. Pinch hitter Jordan Schaefer batting for Julio Teheran. Bunting. And that'll get the run home. 3-0 Atlanta.
Well, they say the best time to use a suicide squeeze is after something happens on the field that takes the attention of the opposing team. off their mark, and that's what it is. The error on Torres right there, that's a tough pitch right there to bunt, and Schaefer goes down and gets it and executes perfectly. Hits off home plate, bounces up, no play at all.
I'm going to be honest with you, that caught me completely by surprise. And as a pitcher, that caught me completely by surprise. And from LINCECUM's perspective, frustrating, right? He's battled hard to get through this, and hopefully nobody feels worse on the field than Torres does right now.
The 2 down, nobody on, a run in. The Torres error, the biggest play in the inning. And back to the top of the order for Simmons. Oh, smoked up the middle. Great stop by Noonan to end the inning. LINCECUM breathing a sigh of relief as that ball sailed right by him. Atlanta adds a run, up 3-0 at the end of 6. ESPN's Sunday Night Baseball, presented by Taco Bell, is brought to you by the makers of One A Day Men's, the official multivitamin of MLB, specially formulated for men. And Kellogg's Frosted Flakes cereal. They're great, aren't they? You love them, right? I know you do. Everybody loves Frosted Flakes.
How do you not?
3-0 Atlanta. As we go to the 7th inning, and Freddie Gonzalez goes to his pen for left-hander Luis Avilan. Pinch hitter for the Giants, batting in LINCECUM's spot, is Hector Sanchez. Avilan in his 2nd year with the Braves, making his 33rd appearance of the season. Again, with Venters gone for the year, O'Flaherty gone for the year. Walden was on the DL, but he's back now. They've had to do a lot of moving and shaking in that Atlanta bullpen in the last several weeks.
14 strikeouts and 12 walks isn't great, is it, Kirk?
Well, it doesn't match up with what you want. So you've seen a mid-90s guy, right? So clearly is a guy that doesn't command the ball well around the strike zone. But you'd expect with that kind of velocity and that kind of arm, especially with he's got a little funky delivery, see some more strikeouts. But
there's Jordan Walden up in the pen, back off the DL, the former Angel, guy who's got some closing experience on his resume, and he shapes up to get a lot of 8th inning work right now for Freddie Gonzalez. But you wonder if the Braves are in the market for another bullpen arm between now and the trading deadline. Ground ball to short, 1 down, especially if BOCHY gets healthy, because if it does work out that they have 6 starters, somebody's going to the pen, and if they can put a power arm down in the bullpen, they might not need to go out and get somebody. Let's go down to Buster.
Guys, I actually was asking around this week to scouts and to front office types who were telling me that generally the relief market's going to be weak this year. A couple names to keep in mind. Jesse Crane of the White Sox has been throwing the ball really well. Casey Janssen, the closer for the Toronto Blue Jays, is another guy who's gaining some notice among teams.
I'm Buster. Thank you. We're getting to that point of the season where we'll be talking more and more about trade possibilities. Here's Gregor Blanco.
I'll tell you, the one I'm waiting, I'm going to be very curious to see is Papelbon. The Phillies, I think, are in a situation where I think they have to make some hard choices over the next month or two. And I think they have pieces to bring back a lot with Cliff Lee, with Pap.
Chase Utley's a free agent. Michael Young's a free agent after this year. I mean, if they clean house, they can get a lot of quality in return.
Well, the problem is those aren't clean house contracts, right? If you're going to, unless they're going to eat a lot of that, which would defeat the purpose of doing it, you're going to have to make it. But there's trades to be made there, right? The Tigers we were talking about, you could see Pap possibly heading that way. As the Phillies, do you trade a guy like Pap inside your division?
Phillies lost again today to Colorado 5-2. They're 4 games under 500, 8 back of Atlanta at the moment in the National League East. You know, with that nucleus they have, as much as it's getting older, you keep, if you're a Phillies fan or somebody with the Phillies, you keep saying maybe one more year, one more run at it. It's got to be tough to kind of give up the hope and make those deals.
Well, and it's also sentimentally tough if they have to make a decision on Chase Utley.
Yep.
You know, do you trade him to try to get something back for him, or do you just let him walk and let him finish the season, you know, with your team? Or do you find money and sign him? Who knows?
Well, they got a lot of heavy contracts on that team, though. 5 or 6 guys eating up a ton of their payroll.
Well, and that's what I mean. If hypothetical Papelbon goes and Cliff Lee goes, your payroll, you're going to have to pay some of their deal. So their payroll is still going to be very high, but you're bringing back a lot of young players who are going to make the minimum.
Right. That's the only way you
rebuild.
That's the only way you get legit prospects back, is by taking the bulk of that contract, or those contracts, plural.
0-2 again to Blanco, taken down and away as we check in with Buster again.
Yeah, guys, I talked to executives this week about Papelbon, and of course, Ruben Amaro right now, the Phillies general manager, is telling people, look, I'm not in the mindset to sell, but if he sells, as you guys have been talking about, the contract is the big deal. Papelbon's set to make $13 million in 2014 and 2015, and about $6.5 million for the second half of this year.
All right, Buster, thank you. 1-2, fouled off again.
Not a bad job if you can throw 95.
Well, we were having the conversation before the game about contracts and value and all the big deals and long-term deals with Pujols and Hamilton. I look over there and see Greg Maddox's name on the side of this stadium and think, I'm trying to think of the guy that spent almost a decade and made a lot of money and that was worth a deal like that. Maddox, Randy Johnson in Arizona. I was trying to come up with some others. Hard to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Mike Messina was very good with the Yankees when he signed that long-term deal.
I think RJ was in Arizona for 6 or 7 years, won 4 Cy Youngs or something.
That's pretty good.
That's a good return on the investment.
Well, and word today, Buster, right, that Clayton Kershaw may be close, right?
That's right, because the Dodgers have settled their situation with revenue sharing their upcoming TV contract with Major League Baseball. So they have been moving closer to a deal with Kershaw for 7 years. It's expected to be north of the Justin Verlander agreement, which netted Verlander about $180 million. Remember, Kershaw is 25 years old. He's not a free agent until after 2014. So unlike the Verlander deal, this contract would not get much criticism within the industry.
Yeah, I was thinking 7 years, $7-8 billion for Kershaw is probably market.
3-2. Got it.
Tell you what, a lot that you need to know about Clayton Kershaw. 1, he's a great competitor. 2, he has great stuff. And 3, sadly, they got into a fight with the Arizona Diamondbacks. And most of the times, your number 1 guy is not going to be anywhere near the middle of it. He was right in the middle of it. And that just tells you, how much he cares for his guys, how much he cares for his teammates. And, Tim Lincecum's the same way. He gets out of the game, whether he pitches good or bad, he's in the dugout. He's cheering on his guys no matter what. And you saw it. He got a squeeze play for a run, Then Noonan makes a great play. He's out there pointing at him, clapping for him. You know, that's a great team guy.
It's one of the reasons why you root for him to make the adjustment. I like he's fun to watch pitch when he's on, because I like any pitcher that makes a hitter look stupid, and he has the ability to do that with his stuff.
Brandon Crawford, the batter, 0 for 3. 2 down, nobody on. The Giants batting in the 7th, trailing 3-0.
I'll tell you what, one more thing on Kershaw. I had a chance this spring to meet and talk to some of the aces around the league. I know they're big, and I'm used to them being. I wasn't ready for how big. He is enormous. Thick, big, great, like ace body. Thick bottom half, big arms, big shoulders, and 25.
Yep. Fierce competitor. Remember that opening day game we did this year, Crucky, the game against the Giants, where he pitches brilliantly and then he hits a home run on the bottom of the 8th inning. What a game. Yeah. A big batter here for Avilan. You don't want to open the door at all. Let Crawford on and then have Posey and Pence coming up with men on base here. And it looks like Avilan will get the job done. Freeman unassisted. Giants go in order. 7th inning stretch. 3-0 Atlanta. stopped in with his sons, Justin and BJ, and BJ's son Riley here on Father's Day. A really nice pregame ceremony as they throw out the ceremonial first pitches here in Atlanta. It is Father's Day. You can help keep Dad in the game. Join Major League Baseball in supporting prostate cancer research with the Home Run Challenge. Visit MLBcommunity.org or HomeRunChallenge.org to learn more. Prostate cancer is fighting prostate cancer is a big initiative for Major League Baseball on Father's Day. I know my dad is watching back home in Toronto as a prostate cancer survivor. And to all the dads, glad you're with us and stay healthy. Major League Baseball doing a great job on this day with players, managers, coaches, everybody on the field, promoting awareness, wearing blue wristbands, blue stickers. Clubs use a special MLB Father's Day lineup card. And Major League Baseball donating $50,000 today to help fight prostate cancer. Bottom 7 in Atlanta. Braves 3, Giants nothing. Left-hander Jose Mijares is on for San Francisco. And he'll face the left-hand hitting Jason Heyward to get it going. Two, 3, 4 due up for the Braves. Heyward 0 for 2 with a walk. Single runs for the Braves in the first, third, and sixth tonight. 3 runs, 2 earned, given up by Tim Lincecum. Julio Teheran going 6 shutout innings tonight, walking 1, striking out 8 for Atlanta.
Watch Heyward, how he bounces on his knees. He has that like sit down in a chair crouch, but you see how he's moving, his body's moving, upper body, but his head moves with it. And then when Mijares starts to throw a pitch, his head turns. Like his whole head's moving in the process of throwing a pitch. I mean, take a look at this. He sits back in that chair, which I'm not a fan of, but anyway, I mean, you look at him moving, look at his head moving, bouncing up and down. His head's bouncing up and down. Then as soon as Mijares starts to throw, his head moves. See his head, how it just that slight little turn toward first base? That has to take your eye off the ball for a split second, and probably why he's hitting to, barely over 200.
The one thing that I got from Manny Ramirez about hitting, the key to hitting for Manny, was that he literally wanted his head to be in the same place at the beginning of his swing before he started and at the end of his swing, which I found to be just amazing.
He has that bounce and a lot of movement in the hands and everything, but I mean, as his legs are bending back up and down, his head's going with it.
But like we talked about Lincecum guys and mechanics and how difficult they are to change, just as difficult for a Jason Heyward or B.J. Upton to change their mechanics?
No.
Not nearly as difficult? No?
I think Cal Ripken had a different stance every day of the season for like 2 years. Hitters change their stances all the time.
Yeah, and the more you talk to Cal, the more he would even tell you, I change stances in the middle of an at-bat if I had to.
2-2 again. And fouled off again.
I always felt like great hitters might change their approach, but mechanically, they were pretty consistent. And as you get older, you make adjustments. I always found it fascinating, Tony Gwynn, how he would change his bat during the season because of the weather and how he'd use a lighter bat as the season went on.
I know one of the themes that I've learned from sitting beside Crucky about hitting this year is guys with excess movement in their stance, whether it's too much hands or too much, you want as still as possible. You think the best for a hitter is to be still.
I have no problem with them moving their hand, but like, you look at John Jay and you look at Ike Davis and Ben Revere, 3 guys who are struggling. Hunter Pence, but what Hunter does, Hunter has a lot of movement, but what he does is his hands bounce, but they get back up. You look at John Jay, they get caught in between Ike Davis, where their hands go down and they never get back up, and they can't get on top of a ball.
Much like, for me, pitching, when the foot hits the ground, that's the key moment. For a hitter, I don't care what you do as a movement, as a hitter, when you start the swing, what is everything doing?
Finally, Mijares gets him.
And again, you wonder if he sees the ball out of the pitcher's hand all the way to home plate, because look at his head right here. I mean, here he is getting ready to go, but look at that slight turn. He turns his head completely facing toward Majerus, where he starts it off not like that. And as soon as you move your head, the ball has to be bouncing on your moving, and you have to lose sight of it. And again, he goes after this pitch, and he's behind it, and it's by him. And you have to wonder if his head was still, if he would see that better and be able to get in front of that ball instead of losing track of it and having to go by you. There's way too much talent to have a 213 behind his name. Yeah. Way too much.
And the hype was so big. Hit the home run in his first game as a rookie a few years ago. Sent foul down the right side by Justin Upton.
I mean, if you're gonna start with your head one way and move it another, you might as well start with it where you want it at the end, right? Because that's the only way you're going to see the ball. You can't have that much movement in your head. Even though it's a slight movement, it's still a movement that takes your eyes to a different place.
Majerus has it, sets his feet, fires low, dug out by Bell, 2 down.
One of the things we were talking about the doorway earlier and finishing in a position in position to field your position, and if you saw the Tampa game last night, you know how bad that can be. Comes off the mound. One of the things you have to do in the National League, absolutely, as a reliever, is be able to field your position because of the hitters. The bunting, sacrificing happens a lot more over here. Comes off the mound, steps and throws and finishes.
Two down, nobody on. Freddie Freeman 3 for 3. Up to 321 now on the season. Now the Giants will head home after the game tonight. They'll begin a big series with the surging Padres, who won again today and have won 6 in a row. 3-game series in San Francisco between the Giants and Padres. The Braves will stay home and begin a 4-day, 5-game series against the Mets with a doubleheader on Tuesday. And the Mets are going to scheduled to start Matt Harvey and Zach Wheeler in that doubleheader. The Braves have not announced who the second starter will be on Tuesday because of the setback by Brandon Beachy. Speculation points to Alex Wood if they don't need him tonight or tomorrow. Diving catch in center field by Gregor Blanco to rob Freeman of what would have been his 4th hit of the game. Well, we saw Justin Upton with a great catch. Blanco went back and got one early. Now he comes in to get one as the Braves go in order in the bottom of the 7th. ESPN Sunday Night Baseball is presented by Taco Bell. Sometimes you gotta live Moss. And in part by Audi. Truth in engineering. 100 pence worth the price of admission just to watch him go through his routine in the on-deck circle. But he gets it done. He's on deck right now as we go to the 8th inning. Here in Atlanta with the Braves leading the Giants 3-0 with John Kruk, Kurt Schilling, Buster Olney. I'm Dan Schulman.
Now this, to me, this is the save situation here in the 8th inning. This part of the lineup, the score of the game, this is the game for me.
And this is Jordan Walden into the game for the Braves. Facing 3-4-5. Walden recently on the DL with some shoulder inflammation. As mentioned, has some closing experience in his background with the Angels. And this would be a huge boost to the Atlanta bullpen if he can grab hold of that 8th inning job. You want to talk about some funky mechanics.
It's the bottom half of the body that makes it look weird. He kicks his left leg out and stiffens it like Kevin Gregg of the Orioles. There's a couple guys that do this. It's a very awkward thing, and it's not. I've never seen it. You can't uncoach that. That is what it is. But it's also one of the reasons why he couldn't be a starter, and mechanically it's challenging for him.
He hops into it.
You coach softball,
right?
This reminds you of one of the young ladies that pitched softball.
Well, if you watch what happens with the lower half, what he does when he pushes his leg down and then kicks it out, and it creates inertia and momentum going forward. So you're actually seeing him drive through. What it does, though, is it's very challenging to throw the same pitch 2 times in a row. You're going to see the foot goes down and then out. Lands heel first.
It's Kaylani Ricketts for the national champion Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah.
Same leg motion, except she's a lefty.
It's coming in 97-98.
Well, I think she comes in about 104 based on the difference in
distance.
Space.
Yeah. Yep.
But you're right, Dan. This is a huge arm for them. With everything that's happened to their bullpen, if he is healthy and can stay healthy, which is not a small if.
Posey hits a roller to short. And a big first out here in the 8th inning for Walden and the Braves. When Atlanta, the last couple of years, when they had Venters and O'Flaherty healthy, they basically turned the game into a 6-inning game, more than just about any other team. If you were trailing Atlanta after 6, generally speaking, you lost. Makes a manager sleep well at night when you know you got the last 3 innings.
It makes a manager sleep well, but Dan, Freddie will be the first to admit that his first year he overused those guys, and since then Venters hasn't, even when he was healthy, wasn't the Venters he was of a couple years ago, and now of course he's out for the season.
They still have Kimbrel in the 9th inning, one of the game's great closers. Bouncing ball to third. Tricky hop. Johnson got him.
Well, this is do or die because Hunter Pence can really run, and this to me is the easier play than if he. Well, that's a longer hop, but usually if a guy starts charging in and he has to stop, that's when he'll get the bad hop. But Johnson made a great read off that ball immediately coming in. He gets a longer hop than a traditional short hop, but still an easier play than if he would have stayed back. If he stays back, that's a hit.
So 2 down in the inning, and here's Brandon Belt, 2 for 3. $33,681 in attendance tonight here in Atlanta. And they've enjoyed it. Good pitching by Julio Teheran in the bullpen thus far. And just enough clutch hitting here and there to lead 3-0. One of the runs a gift, courtesy of an error on Andres Torres.
And that third run was huge because you're one pitch away from the tying run being on every at bat, and now you're not.
I think the bigger the surprise in the squeeze would have been if he'd have hit Gaddis there and Gaddis would have squeezed. Would have been a bigger shocker.
In 5 years, do you guys think Gaddis is a starting catcher in the National League? Is he a catcher DH in the American League? Is he a pinch hitter? What do you think his future holds?
I mean, that's a tough one. It depends on what he wants. If he wants to stay as a backup catcher in the National League and a pinch hitter, then that's what he'll do. But if he wants to make money, he can go to the American League.
Belt strikes out. Walden with a good inning. We'll see if we'll see Gaddis at some point this half. 3-0 Atlanta. Strikeouts for Tehran. Welcome back to Atlanta. Julio Tehran, one of the big stories tonight. 6 shutout innings. Avilan in the 7th, Walden in the 8th, and it looks like Craig Kimbrell in the 9th. Atlanta leading 3-0, trying to win the rubber match of this 3-game series from the Giants. Meanwhile, for the Giants, we have a major league debut. Right-hander Jake Dunning is into the game, 24 years of age, just recalled from AAA Fresno on Thursday. Had a 1.75 ERA in 23 relief appearances at AAA this year.
Wow, what a Father's Day present for Papa Dunning, huh?
Butterflies?
You know what I remember here? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I couldn't breathe, and it felt like it was 1,000,000,000 degrees.
Here he is in as they say, a triple-decker stadium, big league ballpark. He'll face B.J. Upton, Brian McCann, Chris Johnson in the bottom of the 8th inning. Atlanta up 3-0. Upton 1 for 3, had an RBI double back in the 3rd.
That'll help.
Yeah.
Get that first one over. He's going to feel like he's thrown a 9-inning complete game after this 1 inning.
He will be more tired than LINCECUM after this one's over. But the funny thing is, they say you never forget it. You don't forget anything about it. Anything about that first day, whether I don't know about hitting, but pitching, I remember every detail about it. And this is just such a special thing to watch.
He's got big hands just by watching him twirl the ball behind it.
.6'4", 188, and he's a Georgia guy from Forest Stewart, Georgia, and here making his major league debut for the Giants in Atlanta. 33rd round pick in 2009.
Wow. Throws 95. How did he get that far? Probably because he doesn't weigh 230.
No, the 188 was probably the telltale sign.
And he'll retire the first batter he faces.
Well, I mean, we've seen one hitter, fastball, slider, good, nice mix, nice delivery. I like he's got a real nice finish on his delivery with both his pitches. Nice.
Still didn't see the dot.
No,
it's not any easier from up here than it is from down there.
I never saw it down there either.
Yeah,
that was super slow-mo.
I think that's urban legend.
Here's Brian McCann. We talked about Evan Gaddis last half inning. McCann, we should have mentioned, is in the last year of his contract, so he could be back, could be elsewhere. Yeah, so that really might open things up for Gaddis. And they were very
pleased with how Gaddis took over as the catcher. You know how he prepared and how he worked and how he received the ball. So, yeah, this could be a money-saving thing for the Braves too, where they can let McCann go. Because Laird signed for another year, I think, after this year. And Gaddis catch every day, and Laird be his backup and go with 2 catchers.
It's fun to watch. He was watching Gaddis out here doing early work today, blocking, throwing, and there's a lot there to like in addition to the monster power.
McCann with a fly ball to right field. Pence there, 2 down. Now the legend of Evan Gaddis has grown over the course of the season. He's got 14 home runs, no batting gloves, tomahawks, a 96-mile-an-hour fastball up at the letters from Steven Strasburg. He's hit a couple 450 feet plus, and again as a pinch hitter, he's 6 for 8 with 4 home runs. It's not supposed to be that easy.
It's not, especially coming off the bench. That was the hardest thing, is to sit there for 7 innings. They say, okay, go get, whatever closer's throwing 95 at the time.
Mariano Rivera.
There he is.
A good guy, too. You just spent some time with him. He's really appreciative of not only what he's been able to accomplish so early, but just being here.
Up the alley for Johnson and all the way to the wall. A 2-out double.
Coming out to the on-deck circle.
There he is in the on-deck circle in the pitcher's spot. MLB.TV celebrating 11 years. Watch every out-of-market regular season game live on your favorite supported mobile and connected devices with MLB.TV Premium. Visit MLB.TV for details. If Gaddis gets up, you'll know about it. You'll hear about it. They love him here. Well-chronicled story. Was going to go to Texas A&M. Was battling some personal issues, some drug and depression issues, and decided to leave baseball and basically start a spiritual journey around the country. Took all sorts of odd jobs in all different parts of the country. And a few years later, once he got back on track, got back into baseball, put up big numbers in the minors, put up big numbers in Venezuela in winter ball, put up big numbers in the spring, and with McCann out, he's put up big numbers in the regular season. That bat looks like a toothpick.
Well, but you think about what he can do if the Braves get in the postseason, which they they should get in. They're that good. You know what? With the difference he can make in a game, and not he doesn't even have to hit. They could change the way they pitch to the guy in front of him just by him standing in the on-deck circle. I don't know if you noticed, but Pena hasn't gotten a breaking ball yet.
Pena, former Yankee, and Freddie Gonzalez is really impressed with, saying he's a true National League player. Didn't get much of a chance with the Yankees.
To play in the National League, Dan? He didn't get much chance playing in the National League with the Yankees?
You know what I mean.
Well, he is valuable because he can play third, short, second.
Right. He kind of found himself behind A-Rod, Jeter, and Cano over with the Yankees.
Those guys any good? Not much playing time there either, was there?
No.
I mean, he probably wishes he was there this year. He'd be starting every game.
To the backstop, and to third goes Johnson. Wild pitch, charge to Dunning. Dunning in his major league debut trying to get out of this inning unscored upon. A runner at third, 2 down. And it looks like he'll do it. Gaddis left in the on-deck circle, and we'll go to the 9th here in Atlanta with the Braves leading 3-0. And one of the game's best closers, Craig Kimbrell, on his way in for the Braves. Craig Kimbrell coming out of the pen for the Atlanta Braves. One of the hardest throwers in the game, one of the best closers in the game. On with a 3-run lead, looking for the save tonight here in Atlanta. He's already got 18 of them on the season. Sports Center is next here on ESPN. A look at how the U.S. Open finished up. A recap of Game 5 of the NBA Finals and everything you need to know from a busy Sunday in Major League Baseball. Well, we talked earlier about the difference between 90 and 94. Now we can talk about the difference between 94 and 99.
And I think he separates himself from every closer in the game, other than not named Rivera for the most part, because as hard as he throws, he still pitches. He moves the ball corner to corner. Got obviously a plus breaking ball, but he pitches with that stuff.
There's the breaking ball.
Well, that's what's not fair. I think anyone who throws that can reach triple digits shouldn't be allowed to throw a breaking ball. That just should be a rule.
Wow. One down.
Well, you remember we were talking earlier in the game, Craig, you talked about having to be ready for a big fastball, right? You have to cheat to get to a good fastball. And this guy, you have to cheat on every pitch because he throws in the upper 90s. And not only that, but he throws in the upper 90s in the strike zone. And that's a game changer because he keeps it, for the most part, down in the zone.
Now Joaquin Arias. 4 pitches, 4 strikes from Kimbrel.
And this is what you hate as a Giants hitter. You're down 3 runs. You know, it's take a pitch, take a strike. You know, maybe we'll walk. And he throws 98 on the outer half for strike 1, and then it's go get this breaking ball, boys.
99.
Six pitches, 2 punch outs. I mean, if you like that sort of stuff.
If you like power, I guess.
That's got to be a great feeling when you know they can't hit your fastball.
You're throwing a fastball. The hitter knows you're throwing a fastball. Everybody in the park knows you're throwing a fastball, and there's nothing the hitter can do about it.
Nick Noonan.
Get me over.
Yeah,
tough night for the rally cap, man.
Hey, you only put that on when a bad pitcher's out there,
or when a rally actually has a chance to happen.
Well, we won't see 9 pitches and 3 strikeouts. First miss he's had.
And I'm guessing as a hitter, you generally like him to miss on the other side of the plate with that.
You don't want him to pull a 98 miss.
This whole inning was set up by those 2 breaking balls he threw in the first at bat.
He might hit triple digits here with him trying to get the 3rd strikeout of the inning.
Deep but playable. Braves win. So Atlanta takes 2 out of 3 from San Francisco. A 3-0 win here on Sunday night. And a win number 5 of the season for Julio Teheran as he goes 6 shutout innings, walks 1 and strikes out 8. For that performance tonight, Teheran is tonight's Chevrolet player of the game. 22-year-old now 5-3 on the season. He got some help from the bullpen as Avilan, Walden, and Kimbrel each delivered a scoreless inning in relief. So Atlanta ups its lead in the National League East, 6.5 now over Washington, 8.5 over Philadelphia by taking 2 out of 3 from the Giants. They win tonight, 3-0 here on Father's Day in the ballpark. Major League Baseball continues tomorrow night at 7 Eastern here on ESPN as the Cardinals take on the Cubs at Wrigley. Sports Center is next. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For Kurt Schilling, John Kruk, Buster Olney, and our entire ESPN Sunday Night crew, I'm Dan Schulman saying thanks for watching and so long from Atlanta.